Hi guys, my name's Seb Tudor. I'm the man on the Silver Mountain, and welcome back. Today, considering we had the Labour leadership elections end of last week, and just last night we had the US's um, uh, presidential debate between Clinton and Trump, um, something's becoming very apparent to me, and it's something that's been apparent to a lot of people for a long time, but at the same time, it touches on every issue through religion to politics to arguments in families to arguments between spouses to every potential disagreement along the line. And that's not necessarily saying um, that this stands true for everyone or everything, but in most instances that at least I've come across or that I can see on a day-to-day basis, it seems to be the case. Um, and it's that everyone's trying to make the world a better place, but better is such a subjective term that it doesn't usually allow people to get together and agree. And and so it's the road to hell is paved with good intentions thing. And looking at the presidential debate, which granted I've only watched the highlights of so far, I've not watched the whole thing as I intend to do, but from some of the comments that were picked out as highlights by various news sources or by various individuals, it stands out that even if you don't agree with their methods, even if you don't necessarily like the candidates, I don't particularly. If I was in the States and able to vote, I wouldn't particularly like either of the candidates that the major parties are fielding. But it stands that both of them are trying to, in some way, make the world a better place, and you can't fault them for that because they're trying to make the world better for kind of themselves and their own circles and their own families and things. And if there's a majority of people that if you put them in the same situation, they'd do exactly the same thing. Um, and so it's a tough situation to blame for, but at the same time, people are going to do that because each different definition is going to come with different behaviours, different rules to follow, and that's where all of these arguments and upsets come from. But speaking of the road to hell being paved with good intentions, I feel like there's a potentially quite easy way to avoid the trip, um, and that is that if you look at the world at the moment, the one thing that causes most of the hardship, most of the upsets and disagreements, it is the fact that things don't work very well. You have governments that are looking to, so in theory, they're there to represent their populi and to um, further their country, and yet often their own more selfish interests are taking hold of the matters that they're having to address, um, or their perspective from either the lofty position of some kind of political sage class or just having a substantial amount of additional information that isn't available to the public, or deliberately misleading people. Um, these things are all contributing factors to the the failure of various government systems. And so I feel that instead of worrying about being good and improving the world in regards to a subjective better, why can't we just look at making it more effective? Streamline the way it works, make sure that all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed, and then see what happens. Because if the world works effectively, and if things get done in good time, and if people are represented and if you have a very solid base for economy where competition is both kept in check and also and yet still somehow encouraged, then there's no reason to believe that would potentially collapse. And I realise that there would always, I'm not looking at this in some kind of utopianist way where it would solve all the problems or it would allow everyone to do very well. But it's a case of having a world that works well enough for everybody so that those arguments don't exist. And that's still a very tall order, but I feel it's a lot simpler because it's mostly logistical. It's all about moving things from point A to point B, or making provisions for certain subsets, or ensuring that if things are effective, they don't have to be good, they don't have to be evil, they aren't aligned, they aren't neutral, they just are. And would you say that a microwave is good or evil because it is slightly faster at boiling water than doing it on a stove, or that it might cook things through more effectively than something else? It's not necessarily good or evil. The result that you get from it may be perceived as good or bad, but the actual mechanism itself is not. It just is. And it is, when it is used, a result is gained. I don't feel like at the moment the mechanisms that we have are purely mechanisms, because there is so much in the way of either pandering to certain demographics with those mechanisms or appeasing certain demographics with those mechanisms, and as a result they come out as either trying to make the world better for one group of people and ignoring another, or deliberately trying to suppress. And I feel like that's part of the issue. But going back to the road to hell being paved with good intentions, regardless of which side of the argument you're on, you have to realise that people are not purely good and they are not purely evil. If you believe either of those things, then you're part of the problem. To quote Yoda, only a Sith deals in extremes, and that's pretty accurate. Only someone who is so dogmatic as to focus on one or other extreme is going to look to create a better world for their subset, their sect, their social group, whatever, by stepping on other people. Because if they're on the extreme, then there is no grey area, there are no people in the middle, you're either one or the other. And I mean, there are a few people that I can think of that I've met who at one point I very much respected, had high hopes for, and very much enjoyed meeting, who have then, years afterwards, for one reason or another, I won't claim to know why, but they've abandoned certain things that they seem to hold dear previously, and have ultimately, in their pursuit of a better world, have ended up becoming extreme, hitting one of those extremities on any number of a different set of scales that you could use. One example of these people, who I don't necessarily feel that I should worry about naming, is I had the opportunity a fair few years back to meet Lacey Green, and on meeting her, she was a perfectly lovely individual. She was very nice to talk to. Spent most of the evening in a pub with her in London with a group of others who had turned up, and that was There were a few things that kind of made me raise my eyebrows during the conversation, but for the most part, perfectly lovely individual, and I have no quarrel with her. Unfortunately, now more recently, in her pursuit for a better world and through some of the opportunities that she has gained, it is quite shocking to hear some of the things that she's saying, and to see some of the things that have been attached to her. And so I don't completely, in regards to her, I don't completely understand how it happened, but at the same time, I don't care. But it is a good example of where someone who wants a better world, who wants to be active in the promotion of what they see as a good thing, has been drawn into such a place that it just, whilst they have benefited from it personally, they're not helping their vision of the world come into fruition. The things that she highlights through her various shows, the things that she has said and done, do not necessarily stand out as things to make the world better, just simply due to the fact that half of them don't make any sense anymore. But examples aside, again, I feel like ignoring good and evil and going for simply something that works is a much better idea. Anyway, I'd love to hear what you guys think. Should we deal with good and bad? Should we deal with the extremes one way or the other, or should we look at just making the world run properly, and then we can worry about the rest later if we have to worry about it at all? Tell me what you think in the comments down below. If you found this video interesting at all, drop us a like, subscribe for more, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.